Remakes are big business and make a lot of sense. Take a game that has already been released, listen to feedback and come back with an improved product. Mix that in with advances in technology and the excitement of a pre-established fan base, and in the right hands you have a successful video game dug up to make you more money. But a lot of the obvious ones have been done already, or are currently in the works. Still, having a deep dive into my collection of games, I have found a few I would love to see modernised with nowadays qualities of life improvements and taking full advantage of today's hardware. So join me if you will to my list of the top video game remakes I'd love to see.
It was bad enough when the dark forces were contained in the underworld.
Despite the underworld invasion, the people haven't lost hope. It's our duty to protect them.
Kid Icarus Uprising. Nintendo, I get it. You had a new handheld console and you needed a killer app to sell units. And this game looks impressive on the handheld, don't get me wrong. But when you had to release a console stand with the game because you knew it was uncomfortable to play on the damn thing and gave players hand cramp, you know you released it on the wrong console. With the Switch now out, this seems like a no-brainer to me. Using the Joy-Cons features to the max, a remake of Kid Icarus Uprising would be amazing and finally put Pit and Palutena's franchise in the limelight. With so many of the games locked behind dated graphics or console limitations, Nintendo could now have a surprise hit on their hands. The story was entertaining with funny and memorable characters, the battles were epic with the flying sections being the highlight. It was just the damn land sections that were clunky because you didn't have enough buttons on the 3DS. A remake could address this and also add an extra depth to the graphics that the DS just couldn't handle, no matter how impressive it was for that system. Most importantly though, it would just avoid the hand cramp. Dragonforce. Dragonforce, for the people who don't know, was a unique Sega Saturn game where you managed an army of soldiers and tried to take over the land, like the board game Risk. It kind of mixed Football Manager style tactics, as you didn't exactly control characters, rather manage them from menus and watch the battles play out based on your choices. You would try and build alliances and gain strong warriors and develop them into the strongest army in the land. With several leaders to choose from, the game had a ton of replayability, and the story that played out depends on your decisions. With over 100 pixel fighters swarming the battlefield while you gave them orders to try and win the day. A remake with modern technology could mean you could ramp up numbers to the thousands, similar to the ultimate epic battle simulator on PC nowadays, but with a story where personalities are tied to the individuals. Fighters trying to make you proud, mixed with the difficult decisions that could result in some of your favourite characters either switching sides or maybe even dying. There really wasn't anything like it back then, and I'm not sure there's much of it like it now. With story, characters and scales of battles enhanced for a remake, you could have an RPG with the addictiveness of a SimCity game and the battles worthy of Lord of the Rings. Now that sounds pretty epic to me. Kid Chameleon. You are stuck in a video game, and you're not the only one. Players have been abducted into the latest VR simulator, and what stands between you and their freedom is over 100 levels filled with deadly enemies and the boss, that when you defeat, ends the game and frees all the captured players. But you're not just any kid, you're Kid Chameleon, and you have the power to collect masks that morph you into several powerful warriors, each with unique abilities. So sure, you could go all AAA title on this remake and build an impressive 3D engine to power that. But I would much rather see Sega go the indie route. Get a talented platform game team to build 100+ challenging levels with a Super Meat Boy kind of feel to it. Imagine a devilishly difficult platform game with tight controls where you play as the kid, traversing the gauntlet of death trap filled levels, but picking up masks to give you the abilities needed to survive and master new playstyles. The masks you collect would mean the challenge would constantly be changing, and you would have to adapt to meet the challenge. Bashing through walls, attacking with swords, climbing, high jumps, shooting in tanks. You'd have to be good at them all, as the game kept changing the rules for you to see the next level. Speedrunners and rage players sign up. Phantasy Star. I love Phantasy Star on the Master System. It was simple, straightforward, and impressive looking for the time. There were several sequels to the series on Mega Drive, and eventually evolved into Phantasy Star Online, but what really was the main appeal for Phantasy Star 1 for me was the medieval style in a futuristic sci-fi setting. It was a dungeon crawler RPG, with all your usual fancy tropes of swords and shields, spells and monsters, just set in a distant future across several planets. It used to be Sega's big RPG alongside the Shining series. And the thing is, RPG remakes are doing well for themselves these days. No need to make new characters, worlds or stories, just look back at your original content and give it a facelift. And that's all that Phantasy Star and its 3 sequels need. Some tender love and care. With modern way of life improvements, and you would have a stellar RPG series in your hands once again. With the first one being so addictive, simple and straightforward, you could easily remake that and test the waters, and if people liked it, you've got the 2nd, 3rd and 4th game to remake. I mean, other people are doing it, Final Fantasy's doing it, Trials of Mana is doing it, Xenoblade Chronicles. Come on Sega, this one's a layup, right? Toric 3, Shadow of Oblivion and Rage Wars. Toric 1 and 2 have had the HD treatment, and with the controls improved and extra user interface improvements, it's the best way to play the games these days. Not as popular as their older brothers, and with no PC release to make development easier, Toric 3 doesn't look like it's going to follow suit. But I think a simple HD release of this one would be a wasted venture. The game in its original form was perhaps for the time over ambitious for the software, and it for many wasn't as enjoyable as its prequels. However, these days you wouldn't have those restraints. The ideas on Toric 3 were sound, 2 playable characters each with different abilities that allowed you to traverse different pathways through levels and explore in different ways, wide open environments across time and space for variety, a host of interesting weaponry and enemy types. Toric 3 has a lot of potential. A little rework of the story is all that is needed to not alienate newcomers, and stick on the Toric Rage Wars multiplayer, and old fans would come running back with new fans embracing perhaps the rebirth of the first-person shooter legend. Primal Rage. There are plenty of beat 'em ups that could make a comeback. They could really come back with a straight sequel. But with Primal Rage, as it was only ever one game release, I'd just start again keeping what was good and improving what didn't work. I think you have a game here with a lot of solid concepts that were buried under a Mortal Kombat clone and stiff gameplay. And when the majority of the fighting games are martial arts duking it out, giant monsters would separate it from the crowd, just like it did back in the day. Moving away from the digitised graphics, instead going with a photorealistic look, a revised and smooth control scheme, diversifying and expanding the roster of monsters. I say you should still be able to eat your followers for health, and slaying other monsters in a post-apocalyptic world for global domination is a must, but improve the fatalities and the characters' movesets, and also include colossal interactions with the surrounding stage where you pummel your rival into, I don't know, a side of a mountain, or drop them off a cliff crushing a village before continuing the fight. It would be awesome. Cash into those monster movie tropes and really dial in hard with the scale of the battle, making you feel 100 feet tall. And this would give you a fighter that would find a solid place in fighting tournaments the world over. Alex Kidd in Miracle World. Alex Kidd was meant to rival Mario. He didn't do that. I was also heard things that Alex Kidd was originally meant to be a Dragon Ball game that lost its license and became Alex Kidd. Regardless of how Alex Kidd came to be, he never really nailed down his franchise, because Sega invented Sonic and never really looked back. But should Alex Kidd be tossed into the rubbish bin of the past and forgotten forever? No! People love platform games, and Alex Kidd in Miracle World would rock these days if they remade it. Levels with helicopters and motorbikes, punching bricks, water levels, punching bad guys, challenging dungeons, run away from that motherfucking scary ghost thing. Rock, scissors, paper! Alex Kidd in Miracle World is a fun time, and although the later part of the game can go to hell, Sega once again have a fun license just sitting on the shelf doing nothing. Alex Kidd just lends itself to the kind of gimmicks and situations that Sonic always struggled with. You could make a 3D platformer, or a solid 2D platformer. And it's interesting to think that if Sega kept Alex Kidd relevant, how the transition from their mascots into 3D might have been a little easier with Alex Kidd at the helm. But anyway, just keep the story simple and the level design the main focus, and I think you've got a good time. So come on Sega, give Sonic a rest, he's looking a little tired. Let the kid out, will ya? He's been grounded long enough. And there's a ton of potential you never really tapped into with this one. Duke Nukem 0 Hour. Duke Nukem is the video game equivalent of a Hollywood actor that went off the rails and no one dares do business with again. His last game destroyed his reputation, and it looks like it will be a very long time, if ever, that we ever see Duke Nukem in his own game again. Duke Nukem Forever was stuck in development hell for 15 years. It was filled with terrible gameplay ideas, dull level design, awful jokes, bad graphics and glitches. It was overhyped, underdeveloped. Yeah, gamers know the story. But damn it, the Duke shouldn't go out that way. I always thought a game where you played a down on his luck Duke Nukem after the events of Forever, where he's a laughing stock and the relic of the 90s that everyone is sick of, and all Duke is doing all day is attending birthday parties like in Ghostbusters 2, would be a good start to a new Duke Nukem game. Would lend itself well to Duke Nukem's fourth wall kind of breaking style. Then the world comes under threat that only a hero like Duke Nukem can solve, and he puts all the ridicule aside to kick some alien ass across time and space. And Duke Nukem 0 Hour for the Nintendo 64 has a solid basis to allow you to get the job done. A third-person shooter, before Gears of War locked down how a shooter like this should be played, there was a lot to like here once you got used to how Duke handled, and besides the landmark Duke Nukem 3D, it's the only sequel that actually is well made and fun to play. But hell, if you prefer first-person shooter, just go with that. You can jump back in time and then laugh with Duke at how out of date the jokes are rather than trying to make them land nowadays. Chuck in movie and game references, crazy guns across all time periods, water levels, city levels, space levels. You could do it all, and the story would allow Duke Nukem to redeem himself. Hell, chuck in a secret level where he goes to the future and takes down Skynet and the Terminators. Or maybe the Deadpool 2 post-credit scene where Duke Nukem stops Duke Nukem Forever ever being made. In the original Duke Nukem 0 Hour, Duke sunk the Titanic and killed Jack the Ripper. So why not? If this doesn't give game developers the scope to make Duke Nukem great again, then fine, bury him and I'll never mention him again. Star Fox Assault. When Nintendo released Star Fox Zero for the Wii U, there was a lot of excitement. But no one could understand why the decision was made to have the game release with the control scheme that it had. It was just not fun to try and control the R-Ring with the Wii U tablet while watching the TV, then the tablet, then the TV again. And although I enjoyed the game for the most part, I cannot lie that the thought of picking up that tablet to try and get my head around the controls once again has put me off playing many times, where other Star Fox games never had this problem. But for me, they made the wrong call on this one. They should have remade Star Fox Assault. Star Fox Assault was trying to be the Star Wars Battlefront game that Nintendo could have used to be the massive online shooter they desperately needed. Ground combat, air combat, space combat, fast, frantic and a lot of fun. When it worked, that was. At the time of release, online play was in its infancy, and the couch multiplayer that Nintendo, to their credit, tried to keep alive was hampered by a terrible graphic pop-up and poor draw distance. That goes without saying, the batshit crazy choice not to have twin-stick aiming controls. Why was the yellow stick on the GameCube changed weapon? Are you insane? What were you thinking? We're all a little older now, a little wiser, and this game, when it worked, kicked ass. Star Fox Assault would be perfect for the Switch, with players battling across the Lilac system, going seamlessly from land, air and space battles, jumping in and out of tank and spacecraft after a massive ground battle, hundreds of playable characters, pickups and levels. Just let me jump into an R-Wing, fly to space, blow up the spacecraft dodging all the lasers that are out there, come back to the planet and help my buddies online gun down some animal space aliens. And not to mention that the story mode was actually good too. Get someone like Retro Studios on this project and take my money. The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages and Seasons. I will be shocked if this doesn't happen. In fact, I'm shocked I haven't heard more people talking about this. With Zelda Link's Awakening being remade for the Switch last year, it seemed obvious to me to use the same engine to build remakes of Ages and Seasons, right? Right? 2 Zelda games, out of reach to many these days, remade for a new audience and filled with the same quality of life enhancements to improve the experience. Cut Link's Awakening's remake, paste into Zelda Oracle of Seasons and Ages. That's an easy one, right? Zelda Link's Awakening was a damn good time, and now that it has been remade, I can think of no other Zelda game that needs a remake more than Ages and Seasons. Get out, whoever said Zelda 2.
Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting.
Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Never has there been a more groundbreaking and spine-chilling game than Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. It was such an empowering experience to play, where everything terrified you. The game straight up messed with your mind, until you began to learn the secrets of the dark and twisting plot, and became your own dark force with the secrets you uncovered to make the monsters fear you. Except it's hard to get people to agree with you these days when the game looks the way it does and plays like a 110-year-old coming down the stairs. Eternal Darkness is still a great game, but the scares just don't land like they used to, like many age horror games of the past. But if Resident Evil can go from looking like this to this, imagine what Eternal Darkness could do. Just throw up an error screen to make me have to undock my Switch, stare at the handheld screen, and have a zombie jump out, making me crap my pants, drop my Switch, breaking it on the floor, and I'd still stick my thumbs up and say, that was worth it, well done dev team. Eternal Darkness' Sanity's meter, where it just messed with the player and made you think you were deleting your saved data or turning the volume down. You can have so much more fun with this these days. Weird sounds coming from the console in dock mode. Make your Switch pretend that you're buying everything on the online store. Make your Joy-Cons constantly drift to the left. Was that joke too soon? Horror has been back in gaming now for a long time, and Eternal Darkness doesn't need to complicate things with a ham-fisted sequel. Just remake the original, improve the graphics, and take advantage of all the new cool features you could. It would be a good time, and everybody would be talking about it. Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VII Remake is fantastic, for the most part. Just don't get me started on the ending. But out of all the Final Fantasy games that have ever been remade, rebooted, and re-released, Final Fantasy VI, in my opinion, is the game that needs the remake the most. No joke. Ask any true Final Fantasy fan who has grown up with the entire franchise, playing all the games, not just the ones on PlayStation, and you will see Final Fantasy VI in their top 10s list above all the rest of the series more often than not. The characters are deep, the story is well crafted, the bosses, the scenarios, moves, worlds, summons, music, all of it is fantastic. Well thought out and epic. but those graphics are awful. I don't care what you say, the Super Nintendo could do a lot better than this. I'm not talking about the backgrounds, more the animations, because they chose to portray all the game's most impactful moments through tiny character sprites. They had such little range to express feelings. And enemies and bosses, although much better drawn than the main cast, had no movement and did nothing but shake and flash. It was like being attacked by a JPEG. Remake the game with more expressive character models and add cutscenes that show the impressive character design and emotion. Have enemies breathe and animate to show how menacing they actually are. It really wouldn't take much. The feelings of the original game is held up by the music, but again, how much better would the soundtrack be with the fully orchestrated tracks? I know for most this is a scary thought, don't mess with the classics, man. But so what if they break it? You can go back to the old one and I might like the new one, and then we can both be happy. Or argue over the internet some more. Many hold this game as one of the greatest of all time, and I will be right there with you as soon as this game gets the remake its legacy deserves.